There was a case in America of a dad, a postal worker, who was driving along and his two sons were in the back and he thought one of his sons was a demon and cut his son's head off.
Right.
But that would be classified as crystal meth psychosis, would it?
Well, if he was taking crystal meth, then
Yes, that's
absolutely.
not a mental illness.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
under the effect of drugs, it's not a mental illness.
So basically,
Do you have situations where they combine?
yeah. So basically, you can have there's drug-induced psychosis, which is where somebody with no known psychosis takes drugs and then all of a sudden becomes psychotic for a very short period of time. Then the drugs go out of the system and then they're back to normal. I've got an interesting case about that if you'd like to hear about it. I'll come back to that. And there's some people who have a psychotic illness like schizophrenia, then they take drugs and that rockets them into a state of psychosis. But it tends to last longer than the 2 or 3 days when the drugs are in your system. And then you've got very occasional cases where you've got somebody with no mental health, no mental illness history who becomes psychotic on drugs and then stays psychotic. So they flip into schizophrenia. And you can't really know for sure whether they would have eventually got schizophrenia or not. You don't really know.
It's like something snaps in the mind, isn't it? Because, you know, a lot of my friends did a variety of drugs and some of them did, after a very short period of time on crystal meth, had delusions.
Yeah.
Which they still had years later when they were off the drugs. They still believed those things and the personality kind of shifted into a more paranoid.
And did they believe them to the same kind of intensity? So was their behavior reflecting?
Well, because they weren't actually on drugs, their behavior was more normal.
Yeah.
But they were set on that delusion that had formed.
Do you mind giving me an example, please?
Yeah, so I had a friend who's deceased now who...
Is Wildman?
No, not Wildman. But it was Wildman and him who got on crystal meth together. And then my friend was a stockbroker. He ended up picking a computer up and throwing it at our boss. And he got fired that day. And then he lived in one of my properties. And he showed up at my property with like a wand. And he was going over the television with the wand and going over all the light fixtures with the wand. And he was saying that the house was definitely bugged. And I was being followed, and we were all going to end up in jail.
Yeah.
This was 5 years before we did all end up in jail, so he was correct on that part of it. But the police
he wasn't psychotic; he was a soothsayer.
The police weren't onto us yet because I read all the police records. They weren't at my house, bugging the house. So I woke up. He stayed the night at my property. I woke up. There was a bucket of water. His pager, because it was all pages back then, that's how we communicated, was in the bucket of water with a note. You know, you're all going to get arrested. You're getting followed. You're getting bugged. I'm out of here. And I later learned he'd fled the state with this paranoia. And he did avoid getting arrested through these delusions. But whenever I spoke to him in later years, you know, he was still of the mindset that they were onto us at that point in time when they weren't.
And was that after all the criminal charges had been dealt with, after the prison time and everything?
So he behaved in that way at my house in about 96, 97 when I was still a stockbroker. But my criminality was starting. Yeah. And then I rekindled with him after my arrest. Started to write to him and stuff, and spoke to him after I got released. And but I've met a few people like that they've what's happened to them.
Yeah.
There was another one who came over with my friend Hammy, who's Wildman's cousin. And I said to them, just help yourself to the drugs in the house. And I didn't warn them, because in England, you take a gram of speed, don't you, and you eat it. So they were eating grams of crystal meth.
Right.
And when I got home, their eyes were like popping out of their heads, and they'd drunk like dozens of beers as well. And I went to bed and I woke up and they were having the exact same conversation when I woke up. And they were a bit stressed out. So I was like, let's go to LA. You know, I know some women out there. We could chill out. We'll go to the beach. And in the car to LA, I noticed like they're like this all the way. Like, and then they're like, Shaun, you need to pull over. There's people following us.
Yeah.
People following us. Anyway, this is a long story. It's in my book Party Time if you want to read it in the new edition. The paranoid, how it built up in intensity where many things happened. And it culminated in us in this little pink hotel room on Sunset Boulevard. I get the same room as them because I want to keep my own on, but then they're like, you've set us up for a drug deal. That's why we're out. We're all in the same room. So I got my own room. Ended up getting a call from Hammy. You need to come down here. He's freaking out. He's looking out the windows. He said there's helicopters coming. I've set them up for a drug deal. He grabs all his luggage, throws his luggage at me because his fingerprints is on it, opens his wallet, grabs his cash, throws all of his money at me because his fingerprints are on it. I'm setting up for a drug deal. Runs off down Sunset Boulevard like a wolf on acid, like a wolf on acid. He's like, and days later, he wakes up on a bench with all of his clothes pilfered by the homeless people. He's just got his trousers on, and gets a cab to the British Embassy. And apparently during his psychosis, a Japanese family of tourists had asked him to take pictures of them. No. He knew that they were following him and bugging him with there was a bug in the camera. So he said, yes, got the camera, smashed the camera on the floor and ran off. But I'm told to this day, he believes I flew him out there to set him up for a drug deal. Okay. So I've got multiple friends, associates and people from my life experience have gone. Yeah. They've took crystal meth for a very short period of time and something's gone in the brain. Yeah. But I've seen other people who've took it for a long period of time and they've been fine after when they've got off it.
Yeah. There's not something that I've experienced that often in terms of the patients that I've seen. Yeah. I do wonder whether it's crystal meth actually, because obviously you don't use that. It's not used as much in the UK compared to America. Yeah. So I wonder if there's something about that as opposed to, crack, for example.
Yeah. So before I sidetrack then, what was the case you were going to give us?
I just want to say you've got some interesting friends, Shaun.
Oh my goodness.
Who needs enemies?
I should have brought you a copy of Party Sign with all that in it.
So the case that I saw...
Capgras is where we on?
Capgras. No. So Capgras is delusional misidentification.
Oh, we did that one, yeah.
Yeah, but you're asking me about... drug-induced psychosis.
That's it. Yeah.
So a few years ago, I assessed a gay man from South Africa, and he had just been kicked out of his grandparents' house at Christmas time. So he's walking around Soho, looking for sex, basically. And he met a random man on the street, went back to this man's flat for sex, and they did this drug called a booty bump. You heard of a booty bump?
No, I've not heard of that. What is it? A booty bump?
A booty bump, yeah.
E-booty bump?
No, just booty bump.
Booty bump?
Booty bump, yeah.
Has anyone heard of that one? Booty bump?
I don't think it's a drug. It's just a method of taking drugs, I should say.
Oh, okay.
So
booty
what
bump.
You do is
like a butt rocket.
I'll
let you explain.
I've not heard the term.
Don't know anything about the butt rockets.
But, it does sound like it could be called a butt rocket. Yeah. If I had to think of a name for it, probably a butt rocket. So what you do is you mix. I think you mix either crystal meth or crack in water, and then you shoot it up your bum, and it goes through your sort of
gets absorbed
membranes.
by that.
Yeah. So he did one of these, and he'd used drugs sort of on and off for most of his life, but he'd never done this before, and basically became completely psychotic in this man's house immediately.
So that was, did you say it was speed and crack?
It was crystal meth and crack that he'd used,
yeah.
But I Googled it afterwards because I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. I didn't want to ask him. And I was like, no thanks, doesn't sound like it's for me. And he started seeing and hearing dragons in this man's flat.
Dragons?
Yeah, he started seeing and hearing dragons. So he started freaking out. And then this man who'd only just met less than an hour before kicked him out of his flat.
Yeah.
And then he goes round to another man's flat who's a drug dealer, his drug dealer probably, is in this man's flat, and he starts freaking out, locks himself in the toilet, takes off all his clothes, and then he texts his cousin, because she lives nearby, saying this, I'm freaking out here that the police are going to raid this flat, there's dragons all around me, you need to help, come and get me. So he texted the address. And then his cousin went to go and collect him because she was obviously quite alarmed. And he was so psychotic that he forgot that he texted her. So when she shows up out of the blue, he was convinced that she was somehow part of this conspiracy. It doesn't sound too much unlike the state that your friends were in that hotel. Yeah. So he was convinced that she was part of some sort of police sting, because otherwise how would she know that he was there? Yeah. He was naked in the bath in this stranger's flat. And she bent down to pick up some clothes, and he had a pair of scissors on him that she didn't see. And he stabbed his own cousin on the top of her head, and then he stabbed himself through the cheek. Oh. So the injury to the cousin wasn't actually that bad. It was only a little bit of blood, just some glued, but he needed 12 stitches on his cheek. Yeah. And the fascinating aspect of this is that he was fine. Days later, he had to go to A&E, and drugs were flushed out of his system. But when I saw him, he was just completely normal. Apart from this massive scar in his face.
Did
Yeah.
The cousin pressed charges then?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
And what sentence did this person get?
So he actually got away with a relatively minor sentence, actually, on the back of my evidence. It was a community order, because it was his first serious offence. I think he'd done like some shoplifting as a kid.
Yeah.
But basically, his solicitors again wanted me to push for a charge of not guilty by reason of insanity, because he was clearly psychotic and he's clearly fearing for his life. But crucially, because it's voluntary intoxication, you can't get a defence of not guilty by reason of insanity if it's voluntary intoxication, because otherwise
you take responsibility for getting intoxicated.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So he didn't get that defence, which means he would have been innocent in the eyes of the law, but he got off with a community.
I'll just give you one more part of the story that I just told about the guy who threw the luggage, because it just came to me then, which is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. So prior to him throwing his luggage and his money at us, we're like trying to calm him down, me and Hammy. And then Hammy says, I need to take a piss. And the guy goes, why do you need to take a piss? Who are you going to go and signal to? And Hammy's like, I'm not going to go and signal to anyone. I've been drinking all these years. I need to go and take a piss. The guy goes, well, I'm coming with you then. He goes, what do you mean I'm coming with you? You're not going in there and signaling to someone. Saying you're taking a piss and signaling to someone without me. I'm coming with you. He's like, well, really got to take a piss, for fuck's sake. If you want to come with me. The guy jumped on his back like a monkey like this. And Hammy's like, fucking hell, I've really got to take a piss. So Hammy goes, right, and with this guy on his back to take a piss. He's having a piss. The piss finishes. And I'm just like mystified, you know. And all I hear is, why did you shake your dick 3 times at the end of the piss? Who are you signaling to? Well, this is like this ghetto pink hotel room with frosted windows in this dodgy neighborhood. And then these gutter punks like walk past the windows. And the guy's like, I knew it! And the gutter punks are looking, like, I knew you were signaling to someone outside of this window. And that then just set him over the edge. And that's what led to, within a short period of time, the money getting thrown at me and the luggage getting thrown at me. Yeah,
I think I can maybe top that. In this is not a page that I've ever seen, but just a story that I heard, which is, you know, the Wu-Tang Clan rap group. Yeah. So one of their affiliate members, it's not one of the core Wu, but one of their, you know, they have these like Wu-Tang Killer Bees. One of their affiliate rappers cut his own dick off when he was. Oh.
Run it down. What led to it? What happened? What was the after? Did he get a new dick?
Did he get a new dick? Yeah, I went to the dick store.
Bob it.
So I've only seen a YouTube video about this months ago, but from memory, he basically had a drug-induced psychosis. So he went to some sort of party. I think he was like drinking lean and possibly smoking, I imagine, crystal meth, and basically became really, really psychotic. Had these thoughts about how he shouldn't father any more children because he's not a man enough to look after his own kids or something like that. And cut off. I don't think he cut the whole thing off, but cut off a section of his dick. Yeah.
Oh, a section. Yeah. Oh, we got to get to the bottom of this. What actually happened? Was his dick? Was it? Did he lose that section permanently? Was it? Can he function now?
So I think you'll have to do your own research, but I think he had some sort of operation.
People are going to be Googling the hell out of this right now watching this.
I think he had some sort of operation. So I think he...
What's his name?
I don't know. I'm sure you can Google it. But I know he's a Wu affiliate.
Because people were so fascinated by the Lorraine Bobbitt story, weren't they? Because of a similar... Yeah. And that guy ended up... Didn't he get an implant or something? Did it get sewn back on eventually?
So I think Lorraine Bobbitt... Was it John Wayne Bobbitt? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think his dick, did get sewn back on.
Because it was, I don't think she threw it, didn't she? Yeah, and they went and looked for it. Yeah. And they found it and put it in a freeze box or something. And did he get it? Was it successfully reattached? I
think it was, yeah.
But then he became a porn star and got a dick enlargement or something. Yeah. Something like that happened. This is a fascinating case. I think it's on Netflix or YouTube. But I remember because I was in America when it happened.
Yeah.
And just...
What state was it?
Pardon?
What state was it in America?
I can't remember. I think it was in the 90s though.
It was near where you were.
I can't remember. There's so many states, but it was just such alarming news, you know, that. And then all the women were like, the women who had supported battered women were like rallying, saying it's about time some guy got his dick cut off, you know, because he was abusive towards. And I think there was he did have a history of that, and I think in future relationships as well, alcoholism and bad situations with women. Yeah. So maybe he had it coming. I don't know.
Yeah. It's quite a unique way to get into the porn industry, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think he ended up trashing, his life ended up pretty depressed and in alcohol and stuff from the documentary I watched recently. It wasn't very glamorous what happened to him in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't go cutting anyone's dicks off. And
As a doctor, I second that.